Testing, testing, one, two, three, testing, testing, testing. Carte blanche for the sports hit list by the fans and for the fans. Happy New Year to all of our viewers. I don't want to start and saying it's not a happy New Year, but thank you guys for joining me. I'm going to be sharing the show right now. We are live on Facebook, Twitch, and on YouTube. This show is first and foremost prayers for Damar Hamlin. For those who don't know, who didn't see NFL Monday Night Football yesterday, Damar Hamlin, safety for the Buffalo Bills, had a cardiac arrest last night. He's still in critical condition, and just right before I logged on, the family just released a statement, and they said, on behalf of our family, we would like to express our sincere gratitude for the love and support shown to Damar during the challenging time. We're deeply moved by the prayers, kind words, donations from fans around the country. We also want to acknowledge the dedication from the dedicated first responders and healthcare professionals at the University of Cincinnati Medical Center who have provided exceptional care to Damar. We feel so blessed to be part of the Bills organization and to have their support. We also want to thank Coach Taylor and the Bengals for everything they've done. Your generosity and compassion mean the world to us. Please keep Damar in your prayers. We will release updates as soon as we have them. Thank you, from the Hamlin family. So that's the latest from the Hamlin family. Joining us here on the Sports Hit List panel, we have Ricardo Etienne. We have Mr. Mike from the Fan Zone, and Andrew Kahn of our baseball team, who's shifting today. So I thank you guys for joining us. Again, as I said, to open the show, Happy New Year. This is not the way we expected to start sports this year. There's a lot to unravel, so I'm going to do the best I can to try to get this done in 45, because I know, people got to get back to lunch and to work on a work day. But thank you guys for joining me. I guess the first place to start is your initial reactions. Rick, I'm going to start with you. And everyone, clearly we were all in the same group chats and we're all talking about it. And, I got a text from my dean. I'm in a text with my dean, and she's a big sports fan. And she goes, "Hey, Carl, did you just see what happened?" And look, I was flipping. I was watching Raw, and I flipped it immediately. And I'm like, "What's going on?" And then that's when I realized what was happening. But your initial reaction, Rick, when you saw it?
Yeah, similar. I was downstairs, just finished having dinner. I stepped away. I was like, let me grab something to eat real quick so I could settle into the game. And I, head back upstairs to watch it. I could, that's when I see that play has stopped. And so I missed the play itself live, so play had stopped. I got there, and then it seemed like they had just come back from a commercial and then was going away to commercial again. So my brother's here. Y'all know my brother's a big Bills fan. He was watching the game out back. So, that's when he's like, "Yo, are you watching?" I'm like, "What's going on?" Trying to figure it out. So I told him, I was like, I missed the play. That's when he was saying just like, "Yo, made a tackle, stood up to walk away, and just fell." So, you jump on Twitter to try to get news and updates and whatnot. And the video popped up. So I was able to, see it. And, it's just, it's crazy to see something like that where, you see, and I know that's kind of like the sentiment going around is like, you see something that you assume is routine, it's a regular tackle. It didn't look like a serious hit. It didn't look anything, anything other than just a routine tackle. And to see this kid bounce up and just collapse like that. And I think for me, that's the scariest thing is you can see when somebody, like it translated. Through the screen, it translated immediately, me seeing the replay on Twitter and whatnot. As he's falling, I can see immediately, like, something's wrong, like before he even hits the ground, like just the way the body language and as he's falling. So, I think that's the thing that sticks with me the most is, a lot of times you can see guys get hurt and you don't know what's going on and like, "Oh man, hope he's okay, this and that." And for me, seeing that immediately before he even hits the ground, in my mind, I'm like, something's wrong. Like this is like something happened here, So it's unfortunate that this happens to this kid. Is a 24-year-old kid who's, I would imagine is in the best shape of his life and best health of his life, you would think, and then see something like this happen. So it's heartbreaking, as a parent for me, like I keep saying a kid, he's 24 years old, but I'm old. I'm about to be 43 next month, so he could legit be my kid, So it's like, that's the thing that sticks with me more than anything as a parent, is seeing that kid like in the middle of falling to the ground and knowing like something's really wrong here, so.
If you're just joining us, we're live here on the Sports Hit List platforms, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, discussing what seems to be the shaking up the sports world right now. Damar Hamlin is in critical condition. We still don't have any updates. It's just the same from last night. Andrew, what were your first initial thoughts? Seeing what happened? Were you watching the game? Were you? I mean, you're clearly always on the Twitter feed too. But how did you find out, and what was your first thoughts?
Yeah, so I echo a lot of what ETN was just saying. I was watching the game. It looked like a normal, pass to Higgins, a first down, and then it looked like a routine tackle. What shook me up the most is the fact that, a lot of times when guys are hurt, they get tackled, they stay down. What scared me the most is that he got up. He got up, looked like he was ready to go on the next play, and then he just drops flat on his back. And you could see, I believe it was Joe Mixon, turns and he's super alarmed and starts pointing. And then the rest of his defense comes running towards him. And I think the scariest part of it was we saw him get up. It looked completely normal. There was no massive impact. We see hundreds of hits a season that look a lot more gruesome, a lot more impactful. And this one looked like a routine tackle. And he just never got up. And, obviously I was glued to the TV to see what was happening. And I was glued for hours, to be honest. And what scared me doubly was when his teammates started looking at him and the cardiac team came and they were giving him services, and his teammates looked like they saw something that they'd never seen before, something that I'm glad we didn't see. And I'm glad the cameras didn't get it, but it looked like they had saw a ghost, that it was just immediately just a horror scene. And it's just, like you said, 24 years old, man, he's a second-year pro, a kid who's been through a lot. I don't know if people have been following him from Pittsburgh, but he's been through a lot in his childhood and his upbringing, and he's done some amazing things off the field. And for this to happen to him, it's devastating. We can all level with what his family is going through. It's just devastating on all accounts.
So kudos to ESPN for their coverage, and we were talking about in the chat how they didn't even know what to say, and you could tell like the quick cuts to commercial, and knowing production, they would not air, like that's something you would not. Normally the protocol, something is completely dangerous at that point, you're not going to air any emotion at that point. You try to have wide camera angles so you won't get any close-ups. You respect out of knowing what's going on. But you can clearly tell, even from Joe Buck and the entire, kudos to the production crew for pulling off and getting updates, and Lisa Salters being down there and trying to give us reports. Mike, what was your reaction? Were you watching? Were you able to see it live, or did you what was your first initial reaction?
Yeah, so I was watching live, similar to Andrew, and to me, I thought, it was just a regular catch and run and just a regular tackle, right? It didn't look like anything extreme as the play was going, because it was so fast paced. And even when, Damar went down, I went, oh no, another injury for the Bills defense, right? That had just lost one of their safeties or one of their secondary that was going into the locker room for concussion protocol already. And didn't really, until they zoomed in and showed what had occurred, you could see his arms stiffened right away. And right when I saw that, I went, oh shit, this is not good. I was floored by this, because to me, to a lot of us, we go into being a fan of a sport and we watch it and we don't think of what a person's actually putting their body through every hit, as simple as we think it is. Shit, excuse my French, but we're not on the field. we don't know how big of a hit is a hit, right? We think it's just a regular tackle because we see it every day and things are going to be okay. And they weren't. And, similar to Andrew, I was glued to the TV, usually similar to you, Carl, I'll flip back from Monday Night Football to Raw. I didn't check Raw out one time that night. I was glued on the screen because I wanted to know what was going on with Damar. I wanted to hope that the NFL would do the right thing, which I'll get into later. But seeing the players and their reaction, that's what killed me. Because as I've mentioned in the sports chats, you don't always see eye to eye with your boys. You don't always see eye to eye with people. But when push comes to shove, you know who's got your back and who really cares about you. And seeing every single person on that field, whether they were the Bengals, whether they were the Bills, the emotions that were showed the humanistic value of these players. And I think that's often lost in fantasy numbers, in betting numbers, in just overall hatred for certain teams because they're your rivals. We forget the humanistic value of a person. And I think that was what was brought back to light last night. And it just kills me inside that it took something so severe and so tragic to be able to realize again, shit, they're just like me and you. They go home, they spend time with their family, they have families. And to see this just it shook me to the core. I didn't sleep last night.
It was tough.
Find updates. It was just
tough. It was tough. Like before I went to bed, I told Devin, I'll get into it a little bit later. I know where, I'll try to get everyone's opinion, but I think what stood out for me was just the instance, people just wanting to play for, and we saw all the nasty tweets and all this other shit that's been going on, right? And we could touch upon it, but Mike, you made a point about, where they're going to continue, I think, playing the game, right? So that became a question. And again, it's not being insensitive, but we're trying to dissect everything because in the moment, you're thinking the guys go in the locker room, can they come back out and play? No one knows what's going on. There was, I guess, the rumor, and I know Ricky touched upon it, that I guess Joe Buck stated that they had 5 minutes to, I guess, refresh themselves or stretch out. That's what was reported. But according to Troy Vincent, VP of Player Operations for the NFL, he came out and said a statement, say he was on ESPN Get Up. And you could believe him or not, and that's going to be cause for speculation if you want to believe what he said. He said that was never the case. He doesn't know where that 5-minute thing came from. They would never be so insensitive. And he was a former player himself. I would like to take what he said as face value and believe it, that people were just talking and they said, but there was no given situation. And you clearly saw there was a camera where they literally had a phone in their hand and they were discussing what was going on. So you're going to speculate. On that for a second? Yeah. I'm going to get to but we're all going to sit here and speculate because is it an immediate decision that's made after he's carted off the field or he's in the ambulance? The game is over. What do? You see what I'm saying? So again, it's like the same thing Mike and I we discussed about. Nobody knows what to do. We've never had a situation like this before. We need some time to think about what's the next step. And I think there's a lot of fans out here who are just, coming down on the NFL for not, for the possibility of playing the game. Mike, go ahead.
So I think, Joe Buck in a way was pulling an audible there, right? Thinking, all right, the field has been cleared. They're on their sidelines. Again, nobody knows what the next steps are going to be. He sees that the coaches are talking, then they go back to their benches. So in his mind, he's thinking they're going to have a breather to be able to kind of collect their thoughts. And I think, I know what Troy Vincent said, but if you see Stephon Diggs trying to rally the troops, I think there was some truth there that they were going to try to continue that game. There was I don't think there was any talk of them fully suspending that game right after the ambulance left that field. I think shout out to both coaches and both organizations, because they realized that this was more than the game. And I think even if the NFL, and I think the coaches kind of pushed the NFL's hand in this, because I think if the NFL decided that they were going to continue this game, you would have had players on both teams, marquee players, that would have walked out. Because I think they also realized at the end of the day, this was more than just a game. and they didn't care at that point. You could see in Josh Allen's eyes, he was no longer in that game. He wasn't even in that field. He was with Damar and his family at that moment. And the shock in his eyes, I think that is also another contributing factor where they finally decided, let's get them off the field away from the cameras so they can truly grieve at what the situation is unfolding and really figure out a decision. But I really think it came down to the teams that made that final decision. I don't think it ever came down to the NFL or this 5-minute bereavement. I think the 5-minute bereavement was the idea of, okay, let's see if they're going to let them warm up again. And I think that was more of an audible by Joe Buck.
Rick, what are your thoughts here? Do you think it was like, again, we all clearly the right decision was made, but the amount of time, I believe it took, I want to say 45 minutes, maybe an hour before we finally, like they decided that the game was going to be, postponed. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I hated everything about how that was handled. The statement comes out today, and like you said, we want to believe this is a league we love and enjoy watching, and you want to believe they always got the players' best interests at heart. So you want to be able to believe that that was not the case, and there was no mandate that was sent from the league that said, hey, warm up 5 minutes, we're back at it. I hope that's not the case. But as Mike mentioned, watching yesterday, seeing what was going on with Stephon Diggs specifically, it looked like they were under the mindset that they had to continue playing. That's what it looked like. Furthermore, it looked like Coach McDermott might have been of the mindset like, hell no, there's no way in hell. Because I've done that wrap it up motion plenty of times in my life. I know where that comes from. I know what that means. And there's a glimpse of him doing that motion, and I know when I do that motion, that means I've had enough. It's a wrap. I'm making a call right now. This is done, and that's what I felt like I saw. So again, I hope that wasn't the case. I hope the NFL had no intention of them trying to continue playing this game. It'd be a damn shame if they put it in their hands like that to even be forced to make that decision, right? So now here's the other thing. On the flip side, I understand. We're going to talk about sponsorships. We're going to talk about scheduling. It's the end of the season.
I said that point too, yeah.
Playoff implications. I get all of that. I work in an industry that has been scrambling since this happened last night. When you're dealing with fantasy football, you're dealing with betting, I understand the business side of it, right? And I understand it was like, oh, well, nobody knows what to do. We've never done this before. First time it's happened. I call bullshit on that, right? First of all, let's take a look at the past couple of years we just went through with COVID alone, right? A lot of things had to happen on the fly. Sure, people are going to say, oh, Rick, it didn't happen during the game. Anytime they had to shut down a game and move it, it was prior to the game, they were able to handle it. Okay, fine. But at the same time, there's a precedent at the very least for trying to maneuver games, right? Now, let's even bring it closer to home. We literally just went through this last summer. This exact situation. People are saying, we've never seen this before. We've never seen this before. Last summer at the Euros, you had Christian Eriksen pass out on the field in the middle of a game and essentially die on the field and needed to be brought back to life. This just happened. So I don't want to hear nobody knew what to do, and this is something that never happened before. This man had to be brought back to life on the field. Immediately, Goodell or somebody from his office, the first call should have been, yo, this game is over, right? Worst case scenario, at the very least, similar to what they did in that game in the Euros, is say to the teams, hey, look, you guys make the call. What would you guys like to do? At least there, it's a proactive action, as opposed to people speculating, talking about, oh, 5 minutes this, 5 minutes that. Whether that's true or not, I don't care. What we do know is true is that the game wasn't immediately called off right then and there. And that's what should have happened. There's no reason why we should have had to endure an additional 45 minutes of having cameras in these players' faces while they're dealing with this trauma in real time. There was no need for that. We should have never had gotten there. The situation in the Euros, same thing. The word came down. They said, yo, this game is done. We give you guys the option. Would you guys like to come back and try to play later on tonight? Would you guys want to come back and play tomorrow? Their answer, we're not making a decision until we know what's going on with our teammate. As soon as word came that Christian Eriksen was alert and alive and in stable condition, they were able to make the decision, okay, let's come back out and finish this game tonight. You know, you have a manual right then and there. So I don't want to hear it's unprecedented. I didn't know what to do, all these logistics. The NFL is king for a reason. Okay. And I mentioned this in the group chat. When you king, you get to swing king energy. So if immediately they would have pulled that switch, I can guarantee 99.9% that not a single sponsor would have had the nerve to call up and say, hey, chill, come on, man. We need these commercials in. We need to get this game.
So from your
because they could
perspective,
figure it out.
Right. So from your perspective, the standard is you understand this happened last year. Someone in their team should have, I guess, remembered or understood this happened before, follow the same protocol.
Even if you're not thinking about that in the moment, at the very least, you know that this kid essentially died on that field and needed to be brought back, right? I don't want to misconstrue any of the information, but as far as I understand it, he needed to be resuscitated on the field.
Yeah, CPR, yep.
Right? So even if you don't have precedent for that, how can you know that, hey, this kid just almost died on the field, needed to be brought back to life? No big deal. Let's finish this game. That doesn't make sense.
Andrew, what are your thoughts with this situation in terms of, I guess, calling an audible and Rick's perspective on it should have been made to just call the game right away? What do you think here?
Yeah, to me, it should have been called. I think we've become so hardened to injuries over the years where, you know, we saw Tua, we saw Shazier. We see a lot of guys get hurt, and I think we're so used to it now that it's like the show must go on. And I think this kind of sheds a light on that. That's not how it should be. You know, oftentimes we wait for the guys to give the thumbs up, like Ryan Clark said. He was incapable of doing any of that. He was incapable of breathing on his own. I think we need to step back and take a look at how used to injuries we are and how it's just like, all right, a guy's hurt, the show must go on.
Yeah,
it shouldn't be that way.
Next man, we're numb to it, unfortunately.
I think
that's become our culture, our sports culture. It's true.
Yeah, I think we've dehumanized these athletes to that point. And you know, I get it. The NFL, you know, they are the king, but like we saw in soccer, you know, there are audibles to be made. Sometimes you have to put the players first. And I want to believe Troy Vincent, but you know, everything with Diggs and how McDermott and Taylor, just how they were reacting, it just doesn't jive to me. And you know, I've had a teammate of mine die on the field alongside playing with him.
Wow.
You know, I've used an AED. I've performed CPR. Seeing that stuff is life changing. They should have read the player's body language and said, you know what, this is not, you know, they're not able to continue emotionally. You know, you put that product back on the field, what are you going to see? Josh Allen spiking footballs to Stephon Diggs, Diggs crying on the sideline. And imagine, you know, getting news of updates like, you know, him needing the AED, you know, further CPR, anything, you know, getting to the hospital with the family there. Imagine that news breaking. You know, fans have phones. You know, you're trying to tell me that the players are not going to hear updates, you know, on the sidelines? You know, it shouldn't have taken an hour to call that game. It shouldn't have taken Taylor and McDermott to meet, you know, behind closed doors with referees and tell them, hey, my guys can't continue. You know, you got to have a heart. And, you know, to those people who are saying that they should have continued because of their fantasy football championships, because of their parlays, like, read the room, man. If you've never lost someone in such an immediate fashion, you know, it's hard to fathom what they're going through, but have a heart. You know, sometimes you absolutely have to call an audible.
I think another thing to add on, right? So even let's take it a step further than that. So even if you're not making the call to suspend the game immediately right then and there, right? At the very least, send those players back to the locker room, right? At the very least.
Right away.
Right away.
You know, because I could understand, okay, fine, we don't know what to do. Let's try to figure it out. While you're trying to figure it out, send them back to the locker room. At the very least, it should have been like, hey, look, we're going to go ahead and postpone for now. We're going to pause for now. let's try to figure it out. There's no way those players should have been out on that field for 45 minutes enduring that type of trauma in real time in front of cameras while the NFL twiddled their thumbs and tried to figure out what they did.
I
Stephon Diggs
want
was
to jump
trying
in.
to.
Go ahead, Andrew. Go ahead.
Stephon Diggs was trying to rally the troops while sobbing.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine him having to? Obviously, he saw it firsthand what happened. Him having to relive that clip over and over. That's trauma you don't fix by yourself. Those players are going to need counseling, and I pray they get the help or the grief counseling that they need. Obviously his family as well, and T. Higgins as well.
I was just about to say that.
I was just going to say that.
I hope and pray he doesn't blame himself. And that photo of him hugging his mom, clutching her as he left the field, man, powerful.
And it's rough, right? Because you really never, and that's one of those things, obviously nobody knows, right? But for him specifically, you never know. And that type of guilt to be on your conscience and think, well, I was the last person to make contact with him. So what if it was my fault? What if it was something I did? It's terrible all around.
And that's what we have to think about too, right? We talk about players that saw, what was going on with Damar after everything occurred. What about Higgins? How does he come back and play after that incident, right? After he makes a catch, he goes, he thinks it's a good play, and then just seeing a player, his opponent drop like the way Damar did, and to think he has the mental capacity to come back on that field and finish that game. We still had 6 minutes left in the first quarter. That means that it was 3.5 quarters of football to still play. If this was in the second half and the NFL waited that long, I would think, okay, maybe they're just trying to see if there's a way that the game could finish. And I'm not saying they should have. What I'm saying is I understand where they would have thought of it. But being in the first quarter, the third drive of the game, and you don't call it right then and there because you're worried about freaking sponsorships, you're worried about scheduling, you could play this freaking game on a Wednesday. It could have been any other day. But to think that a game is more important than a person's life and also of the player's psyche is what kills me about this. And it's something that we've talked about over and over again about the NFL. We've seen how the NFL has never gotten it right. They've suspended people for years for smoking weed. They've suspended people for years for betting, not on their team, but then domestic violence. They've shook their shoulders and said, all right, come back. It's wrong. Goodell has to take some blame here because this call
but you know what, Mike,
should have been made.
That's a deeper conversation we could definitely have because there's so much with the NFL that I think the issue becomes, like Rick said,
so frustrating.
When you're king, in a sense, you could do whatever hell you want because guess what? People are still going to come back to your product. But I'm going to move on to what people are talking about. Now it's the reaction, right? So what happened, now it's going on and we're all reacting to it. We're all on Twitter. Skip Bayless. Skip Bayless has been so Skip Bayless has been a topic of conversation. I was able to tune in this morning. Shannon Sharp is not there, which is another conversation because now people are saying, did Shannon quit? Whatever. But last night, his initial first tweet said, and I quote, let me read this here. No doubt the NFL is considering postponing the rest of this game, but how? ? This late in the season, a game of this magnitude and crucial to the regular season outcome, which suddenly seems so irrelevant. Now, my initial first response when I read that, I'm sitting here thinking, here comes Skip playing a villain role, right? He's in full media mode. Like sometimes it's hard to see if they're actually going to be in their media mode or they're actually being actual human beings. So I'm like, it's Skip's going to be Skip because I know Charlie. Shout out to Charlie in the group chat. He sent it, and I'm like, I'm not surprised. It's Skip. Andrew replied, he's just like, this is Skip. This is wrong of him to say it. Then you start seeing players react to it. I saw Des Bryant, Terrell Owens reposted, and Twitter was in a complete uproar over what Skip said. But then you start to break it down, and there's some people in our streets, in the Hitler streets, who kind of take Skip's side. Shout out to Ray Jarvis. He said, I think it's being blown out of proportion because Skip is a narrator, right? Skip is a narrator. He's a writer at heart. So he's basically telling it. And when you start to understand it, and I always like to see things from both sides before I kind of I'm just like, you know what, maybe I think the timing was off based upon the tweet. Maybe the timing wasn't right. And I think sometimes words that you say on camera, when you try to translate that to Twitter, doesn't necessarily hit the same way. And even Skip said himself, he says his boss at Fox contacted him and said people are misconstruing what you said, which is why he had to do a follow-up tweet. You can go ahead and read there. But Andrew, let me start with you because I know you were passionate about what he said. What were your thoughts on Skip? And are we really blowing it out of proportion? Is it something that we can completely gloss over? Like, how do we, process again? Because everyone's processing this in a different way, in a different light, something we haven't seen before. Was Skip fair or foul?
We had a very spirited conversation about this, and I do think to some degree there was some, overreaction because Skip is who he is. He has a history of saying, some ridiculous things, and he's taken heat, on a daily basis. I think where he messed up was the optics and the timing.
So you're going to rule it foul? Yeah,
overall, it's still foul to me. I think the optics, the verbiage, and the timing is where he's off. And specifically, I aim it to one word, the word how. Yeah. Like Rick said before, there's ways to go about it. It's not a how thing. There's ways to pivot. We've seen them pivot because of weather. We've seen them pivot because of COVID. We've seen them pivot in other sports because of injuries on the field. Asking how is the wrong question there because it's an easily solvable problem. I think where he really went wrong is just the verbiage of it all. He should have sat back and thought of a more well-contrived response. I didn't love his apology on air today. He made himself out to be a martyr. He made himself out to he kind of apologized for the reactions to what he said. It's not what he should be apologizing about. But overall, to me, it's foul. I get what he was trying to say. It's just, if he would have said it on air, it probably would have came out different because of his tone. But when you're writing stuff, you have to be very cognizant of the words you choose and how you present them.
All right. I'm going to ask for people in the comments, if you can, just, fair or foul here on Skip. Rick, fair or foul?
It's tough, man. I honestly can't answer one way or the other, right?
But for me, please.
So
for me,
overall, based on what I interpret his tweet to be, I'm going to say fair. With that, I'm also going to say I totally agree. The timing coupled with the optics, way off, right? Again, you guys know I work in the sports betting and fantasy industry, and I can honestly say, because of my job, my mind eventually went to, man, I wasn't working yesterday, but my mind eventually went to, wow, let me jump on and see how they're handling this from the business side, okay? Because that's my job, so with the NFL, everything I said about the NFL, I absolutely mean. With that said, I understand their position. I understand where they were out as far as trying to figure out what to do because of everything that Skip lined out. But my opinion to that is, hey, you're the number one show in the game. You're the number one game in the country. You are king. Just shut it down and you could figure all of that stuff out afterwards, So knowing that based off of my own job, understanding why the NFL took so long, despite me thinking they shouldn't have taken that long and just should have figured out after the fact, I understood what Skip was trying to say. I understood that he was trying to give us insight into what the NFL's decision-making process was looking like. When you're dealing with just 140 characters, that's tough to make sure everybody understands. I made the point in the group chat yesterday. I love Twitter, but every single time I write up a tweet, I am literally reading it over and over again, a good 5, 6, 7, 8 times, simply because I want to know to myself, okay, how is this going to come across? You know, how is this going to come across? How is it going to be interpreted based on how I am presenting it? You know, Twitter is the only place where you kind of really have to do that because you can't edit. You can't go back and edit. Sure, you could go back and delete, but once you hit send, you know it's there forever, right? So I understand everybody's focusing on the word how, right? Because it makes you think that he's saying, he's, you know, thinking, yeah, you need to do it. Like, how can you cancel? Go on and do it. And I think, again, I haven't gone back to count the characters and see how many he had left, but adding in something as simple as like, but from the NFL's perspective, how? That changes the entire
verbiage. Yeah.
That changes the, you know, I understood that that's what he meant, but everybody's not going to understand that. So while I personally think it's fair, just because for me, I interpreted it as him narrating the NFL's mindset while we all waited to find out if they were going to cancel this game or not, everybody may not have been able to interpret it that way. So for people who called it foul, I could understand that because, yeah, the timing was a little off. The optics were off. And then, you know, depending on how many characters he may or may not have left, he could have been able to try to frame that how more specifically and in a certain context that didn't leave it open for this type of interpretation.
Mike, fair or foul on Skip Bayless? And those in the comments, please leave your comment. Do you think Skip's initial comments were fair or foul? Go ahead.
I still go with the idea of foul. He's a commentator, right? He's a sports reporter. He's a sports writer. He knows what he's writing. He knows how he's writing it. Whether it's Twitter or not, whether he had certain characters left, depending upon what he had wrote, to describe how big of a magnitude this game was after he wrote the how puts it more into perspective on him saying, well, how could you cancel this game? Right? That's how I continue to interpret it. And I continue to interpret it because of the idea of who Skip Bayless is, right? Mm-hmm. If this was Shannon Sharp or somebody else that has played the game, then I might have seen it in a different perspective. But I think because Skip has always played that villainous role, I think that just caused more of an outrage because, as Andrew stated, the timing, as Rick stated, the timing and how it was written. You know, shout out to Anthony Mullins. Happy birthday, by the way, to the king
Happy
of
birthday,
Brooklyn
President
Nation,
Laker
of the
Nation.
Lakers.
Yes, sir.
Happy birthday, bro.
I will say he wrote, why would he have put it as a footnote that it's irrelevant? Yeah. He should have started with, this game should be canceled. Because even though the magnitude of the game, how do the NFL continue to play the game? That is different writing, same wording, but it's flipped around to show that he is with the players, with Damar in this situation, not showing that he's just a sports reporter that wants news for his show on Tuesday, because we all know, whether we like him or not, how many people signed in to watch his show today to see how he was going to react to it.
And you know what?
And we know the media. We know the media, Carl.
And that's where I'm kind of like, in this given situation, you don't know the human side and the media side, because
it's classless.
That media mindset and knowing it, it's hard to turn off sometimes. Yeah. It's difficult.
It's the same
as much
thing.
As you want to, you're thinking to yourself, the reaction to this tweet, I did the purpose, right? At the end of the day, because everyone's pissed off about it. I know my job is secure. And they're going to tune in. They're pissed off. Like, and then he starts talking. And again, Shannon is not there, so you get a monologue to yourself. Right. And so you start to uncover the layers. So you send out the tweet, you send out a retweet, and then on the following, you're talking by yourself. Again, those are the optics. I'm just giving the facts. You can interpret them.
And then it goes into, and this might seem extreme, but this goes into like a newscast, right? That wants a certain amount of views, you know, showing a shooting in a store, and they actually show certain graphic video, right? Not thinking about the humanistic side, as we've discussed multiple times on the show today, and discussing this man's family, right? You're not even talking about the prayers to Damar. You're not even talking about the player that was just injured. You're talking about how do they continue this game, right? You're more worried about the bigger picture than the moment that just occurred. all of us in our chats were worried about the moment that just occurred. The game was a footnote to us, not that it was irrelevant, but the game was a footnote to us because we were more worried about what we had just seen as a fan base, but as humans and what happened to Damar.
Well, I'm going to move on to this topic, we've had this topic in the Hitler Streets, and I hate this, right? Everyone today is a doctor. I'm getting texts that, and Andrew, you saw it, COVID causes heart attacks. I'm getting I'm getting the videos of doctors breaking down what caused this, right? So, and I know we're still in that figuring out, he's in stable condition, and that's what we know. But to the social media doctors out here, we don't know. So how can we sit here and just, everything is speculation? There's no initial report on anything unless somebody's in the emergency room and feeding information to social media to tell us what's going on. Everyone now has a medical degree, and now it's like, how does the NFL move forward with keeping with player safety and all these other things? Rick, what's your thought on that?
It's a bad year for the NFL as it pertains to player safety. Let's not forget, right on that field a couple months ago, we saw the scene with Tua that we saw, right? So let's talk about the concussion thing. We had a situation with these concussions right out the gate, these first couple of weeks of the season, where everybody was making this big deal and everybody was steadfast on player safety, right? And one of the things that I kept voicing was the fact that nothing as it pertains to the concussion protocols points a finger to a care in the world about player safety. It's literally, what did you see? A guy got hit really hard and went down. Well, did he stumble when he got up? Nah. Okay, cool. He could keep playing. Will he stumble? Yeah, he stumbled. Okay, well then we got to get him out. Okay, but maybe he stumbled because he tripped over somebody's foot. You never know. No, let's get him out. T. Higgins, we've talked about T. Higgins, what his mental state is going to be after being involved in the hit. T. Higgins was somebody who had a concussion, I think, week 1 and week 2, or if it was week 2 and week 3, if I'm not mistaken, and then played in that same game when Tua got his concussion too, right? So now you fast forward just Christmas Day, right? One of the things I mentioned as well is, okay, well, guess what you're going to have now after you do all of this posturing and act as if you really care about player safety with these concussions and whatnot. Guess what you're going to have? You're going to have players who will not self-report. Now they know, as long as I make sure I don't look woozy and I don't look like I'm concussed, the spotter's not going to catch it and I can keep playing, right? So what happens on Christmas? Tua again gets a concussion. He doesn't stumble. Nobody sees him with any concussion systems. He doesn't self-report. He plays the entire rest of the game. Why? Because NFL players, gladiators, next man up. Nah, if you ain't dead, you ain't hurt. You stay in there, you play, right? That's the mindset. Unfortunately, that's the mindset that they've had. That's the mindset we now as viewers and fans and spectators have, right? So
doctors too. I'm telling you, we're all doctors, bro. I'm not gonna let that, like everyone believes that they know what happened and what caused it. It's just like, unless a medical professional to me is gonna come out and say we don't know, we can't.
And that's exactly the thing.
I guess I just take the spepeculation part of it as a matter of people are saying, well, this is what they believe occurred with it is what's grinding my.
Well, here's the thing, right? I'll finish off with this. Here's the thing. We mentioned we don't know, right? So I said all of that to get to what happened yesterday and still focus on the optics, right? It's about, what do you see? You even get to a point where this man is laid out, having a cardiac arrest on a field. He's able to be brought back to life. He's taken off the field in an ambulance. So what do we see? We see that he's fine, right? They're taking him to the ambulance. They've taken him in the ambulance. They're taking him to the hospital. Everything's okay. The show must go on, Again, optics, right? So that's the thing where the NFL is really going to have to go into this offseason and it sucks because I don't know how much of a push the Players Association is going to put on it. Because again, unfortunately, for the most part, I would dare to assume that their mindset is of a similar nature. I have to stay out there and maximize my time as best as I can. And if I think I'm able to go, I gotta go because I could lose my spot and that's going to jeopardize my livelihood. And I get all of that, you know what I mean? But we've really got to get to a point where overall player safety, whether it's concussions, whether it's protocols in a situation like we saw yesterday, whether it's a mental health situation based off of the teammates seeing this and being expected to continue to perform, all of that falls under player safety. So the NFL has to get to a point where they really, really start taking the player safety seriously.
All right, Andrew, and then Mike, I'm going to get you. Andrew, go ahead.
Yeah, so like Rick said, this year has been a black eye on the NFL for player safety. You know, concussions regarding Tua, and you know they did implement a new policy, which I'm all for, but that has led to guys not reporting their concussions. The spotters aren't exactly top notch either. You have some of these guys on the sidelines who are, you know, their job is to identify possible concussions, and we saw on Christmas Day, Tua took a massive hit to the back of his head and was allowed to complete that game. And it came out a day later, boom, concussed. If your spotter is not seeing that, especially when you should have guys who are red flag guys, Tua should be a red flag concussion guy the rest of his career. You know, if your spotters aren't seeing that, are you actually doing your job? And I will give the NFL credit in one regard. Their cardiac and traumatic event team yesterday moved swiftly and enacted their emergency action plan properly, and you know, hopefully did save Damar's life. So I will give them kudos on that, because in the past we know they didn't have these type of measures. So I will give them credit for what they did in having a cardiac arrest team available and how quickly they moved and how promptly they acted. But overall, it's, you know, they've been promoting player safety, but in reality, how much have they actually pushed that needle? You know, to me, it's not enough. And it's going to take the Players Association to really step up and say, hey, you know, it's not just about the show must go on. We need to really take a look at how we go about all these injuries. You know, we see it every week, different injuries. And, you know, obviously, you know, a big thing was made about the ACLs, the non-contact injury. What are they doing? They're changing the turf. You know, a lot of issues with concussions. They enacted these policies, but that also opens Pandora's box to a lot more. There's a lot of, it's like a glacier effect. You know, you see the peak, the tip of the iceberg, sorry, but there's a lot underneath that they need to really hone in on to refine these policies.
Mike, real quick, because I got a final question before we wrap up.
Yeah, absolutely. I just, I'll say, I see it twofold, right? We call everybody a doctor, you know, anytime an issue arises. And I look at it this way, right? I think it's more of trying to make reasoning of what's occurring, right? So I think that is the aspect where we all think we're doctors, but I think it's also the humanistic nature of us trying to make sense of what's going on, right? Because we don't know all this stuff either. You know, so I think it's a humanistic belief that automatically we do it with ourselves, right? How many of us have gone on WebMD to see if we're dying or not because we have a cough or a cold or a sore throat, right? It's just, it's that humanistic.
Deb,
exactly.
Not me. Deb does it, not me.
Well, yeah, but it's that humanistic feeling of trying to make rationale out of what's occurring. But I think I wanted to touch on what Rick said with optics, because he really hit home with this aspect. And I agree with both Rick and Andrew on the idea that the NFL has really taken a black eye to the aspect of injuries and player safety this year. But even last night, we had sent out a tweet late in the night when we saw that, you know, technically Damar was breathing on his own, but he was intubated, still in critical condition. And automatically all of us said, oh, well, he's breathing on his own, you know, things could be fine, right? Not realizing that that was the optics of trying to put a little ease in everybody, but thinking about it, and Andrew put it into perspective, if you're being intubated, you're technically not really breathing on your own, right? You're breathing through a machine. And you know, people see that automatically. And again, textlation is the worst form of communication, because we read that and automatically we say, all right, they should have played that game because he's fine, right? You know, or the game goes on. But no, we don't really know the severity of it, especially because you then still see the critical condition aspect within that tweet. So yes, he might be breathing on his own, but is he really breathing on his own if he didn't have the intubation in, right? And that's the seriousness of it. And that's where we play Monday morning doctor, not Monday morning quarterback, because we all think automatically, okay, it wasn't as severe, this and that, not knowing, one, hope and pray that he gets through this. But even when he gets through this, what are the effects going to happen after this? What are the effects on this man's life after this? His life has truly been altered. His family's life has truly been altered by one hit in a game. And that's what people don't put into perspective sometimes, because they read certain things and automatically think he's okay, he's going to get through this, and life goes on, not realizing you got to sometimes read between the lines.
Now, my final question.
I want to, sorry, Carl, I want to add one thing really quick. I agree with Mike that it's human nature to speculate what was possibly wrong or what affliction he had at the time. But I think it's egregious that some people have tried to push a narrative or a political platform in light of this injury.
It's so ridiculous.
We need as a society to be better with that. And I don't care of your political views. I don't care about your views on anything. There should not be this event should not be used as a platform to push a narrative such as a vaccine.
I'm sorry, doctor or not, how the hell would you even think COVID? I'm sorry. I can't even think of something like that in this type of situation.
I'll send you a screenshot, Mike. I'll send you, I'll send you. Someone sent that to me and I had to.
Those people are in my Skip Bayless packet.
That's like saying he had a cheeseburger as a pregame meal. So
he had French fries and he had gas.
Cheeseburgers will give you cardiac arrest. Come on, man.
Yeah. So my final question, I think, I don't know, no other, from what I've seen from media, discussions have not discussed it. And again, I'm not trying to be insensitive, but I'm just thinking, again, forethinking, okay? And God is good. He's going to be okay. To try to get ourselves back to sports. I think they asked this on First Take where they said to the play, would you be able to play on Sunday now? Is it too early? And you guys can tell me, and we won't talk about it. Is it too early to look ahead, given that we're in the season finale week of the NFL? Is it, or do we just hold off and just not have that discussion until we get further notice and updates? Because clearly we haven't had an update. And it's been a while now, right? So what do we do with that mindset in regard to them? I'm not talking fantasy. I'm just talking about, can the players be okay to play? Where do we go from here now? Now that we're still here, we're still in stable condition. What's the word? What do we do?
I'll start. I think first off, the NFL should be counting their lucky stars right now, because they dodged a serious bullet yesterday. And I think Coach McDermott and Coach Taylor really helped the NFL out.
They saved them. Yeah.
Here's the thing. If that game would have continued yesterday, we talking about optics. The optics would have, without a shadow of a doubt, been, hey, unless you die on that field, you keep playing. That's what the optics would have been, So
it would have been an Owen Hart situation in a sense.
1,000%.
The NFL may not, they may not know it, but they really dodged a bullet yesterday. They nearly shot themselves in their own foot, right? Now, with that said, I don't care where you work. If it's at McDonald's making fries, if you're on Wall Street, if you a teacher, professor, you work in the media. I don't care where you work. If you're at work and one of your coworkers almost dies standing right next to you, I don't think it's going to be easy for you to continue working, right? I think we could all agree to that, right? So for me, at this point, this game needs to be played when the Bills and the Bengals decide they are ready to play. I'm fine with that decision. Whatever that means for the NFL, they need to figure it out. So if the NFL says, hey, because here's the thing, again, working in the industry, I know based off of our rules specifically, we've got a 2-day window, So if the game is not played by Thursday, as far as I understand, things will be voided and scratched and funds returned and whatnot. It's null and void. It's at,
Am I losing them? I'm sure he'll.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, I
sure
think
he'll
you
come
first.
back in. Andrew, so where do we go from here in terms of do we
Yeah.
just do we wait it out for a couple more hours
NFL
because we're all
side,
going to be.
but again, it's the
Oh, here you
NFL.
go.
Continue to
Oh,
guide
thanks.
and go out now and say, hey, today you have to play tomorrow. You know, whatever it is, it's on the players. I think it's up to the players. They decide if you want to make them forfeit. If they say they don't want to play, then so be it. But I'm good with whatever the players decide.
Okay, it's on the players. Andrew, what do you where
Yeah.
do you go from here?
To me, if both sides want to take a tie, so be it. Let's be honest. If they play week 18, let's assume they play week 18. That game yesterday might not matter towards the playoff seedings, depending where the cards fall. So there's a chance the game doesn't matter. As for when they'll be ready, some of those players will never be ready to, take the field again. Will they? Absolutely. They have to make a living for themselves. Football is all they know. A lot of times football players, their mentality is, I'm ready to go to war. I'll die on this field. Some of those players will be left with permanent scarring. Scarring that'll only be fixed through therapy. And, guys who are very in touch with their emotional intelligence, some of them will be never ready to play that game again. It's unfortunate, but the NFL is going to make them play. I don't foresee them canceling week 18. I know last night in the chat I said from the get-go that the game would get canceled, and in my heart of hearts I didn't believe it at first. But like Rick said, Taylor and McDermott saved them, because it's a dire play narrative that gets sent out there if they continue that game. But mentally they might never be ready to play. Physically they will be, of course. As for when they should play, I would leave it up to the coaches and players as well, especially if they have to play week 18 and they see that it doesn't, see if it matters or not.
So Mike,
real quick, hold on, Carl, real quick. Let me just say something real quick. Andrew just said something that reminded me of, as far as the mental capacity and what the mindset is. Think back to when, my gosh, why am I forgetting bro's name right now on the Clippers? Yeah, not Kawhi, the other guy.
Oh, Paul George.
Yeah, think back when Paul George broke his leg in the was it Olympics or US,
yeah,
whatever.
It was an Olympic game. Yeah.
Think back to what the mindset of those players were. He broke, I don't want to say he just broke his leg, but that was just a broke his leg. Seeing how gruesome that was, how distraught and how mentally affected they were. But seeing that type of injury, we're talking about somebody who just almost died, who technically died for a little bit there, So you want to talk about trying to rationalize something and just push it to the side and keep going?
Ryan Clark mentioned that last night, that a lot of his teammates and his family and even himself, it took them a long time to get right after his injury. And he said a part of him, he said it, sounds terrible, some of the words, but he kind of surmised or intimated that a part of him died in that incident with him. But he left a part of himself on the field that day. So some of those players might never be ready.
It was an exhibition for Team USA. Shout out to Andres in the hit list with the facts for us.
So I'm gonna jump in here real fast, Carl. I'm gonna say, unfortunately, as we say, NFL is still king, so it's really gonna come up to them. I wish it was up to the players on when they're ready. But unfortunately, because of the magnitude that we're getting into the playoffs, where, the Super Bowl is going to still be on the same day, which is February 12th. It really comes down to whether or not, as everybody has said, is this game really going to be relevant to the standings, on whether or not they just take that tie where they're 12-3-1 or 11-4-1, whatever the rankings could be. I think we find out by Thursday on what their next decisions might be. It's also hard because we have the college football championship next Monday, right? So do you really try to play that game and try to compete with that? And you can't do it on ESPN. So when do you really play this game and still play week 18 as well? So there's a lot of things that the NFL is kind of flipping around with right now, but it really is going to be ultimately the NFL, because they are the do-all and they are the kings of sports, but they're also, Goodell is going, if Goodell tells you to play and you don't play, there's going to be ramifications from that. I do want to also say shout out to Andrew and a couple others in the chat last night. because unfortunately from this incident, you're going to see a lot of these young players retiring a lot earlier because they're going to start realizing more and more that it's more than just life in the game. It's
JJ
more
Watt is
life
retiring,
after the
right?
game. Well, he was
Yeah.
retiring anyway. Yeah,
He's retiring anyway. Yeah. Because of that.
But
yeah,
I think
right. He was
that's what we're
retiring
going to
anyway,
start seeing. And I think a couple of players from these
It's-
teams,
it's-
we're going to start seeing this because of the mental capacity from this incident.
Yeah.
Also, in regards to making up the game, if they make the players play 2 games in a short span, that doesn't speak to player safety.
No,
Right,
it doesn't.
exactly.
Not at all. They can't do that.
But
No, yeah,
again,
optics.
what do they do unless they play 2 games on a Thursday, right?
Yeah.
If they do that, and that all depends also on whether or not Damar's situation improves, and now they're in a mindset where NFL spins it, and this is where NFL is tricky, and so is other sports too. They can spin it as a tribute to Damar, right? In his
Yeah.
getting recovery and everything.
And again,
like
for
that.
those
So
who are
there's a lot of
joining
different-
us, it's not to be insensitive. I asked the question, and it's given stable condition, he does.
It's
get
a question
better.
everybody's asking.
It's a fair question. Everyone's
asking.
wondering about, so we addressed it.
Here's the thing. You touched upon things as far as what Damar's status ends up being. I can't wrap my head around any scenario where the Bills are playing without knowing
what his situation is.
that
Right.
he's okay.
Absolutely.
I
If
just
he's
can't.
not okay, they're not playing. If he's
So-
not okay, they are not playing.
So for me, the NFL can say, "Hey, you got to play if you want," but I'm gonna lean on the players still ultimately making that decision.
And
It's like, hey,
that
look, you
locker
could
room
tell
is very
me,
tight.
yeah,
Yeah.
you could tell
Yeah.
me I have to play, but I don't have to play.
But
So
also
make
think
sure-
about
yeah.
it. The Bills are like the premium team right now in the NFL. So I think they're going to have some more say than we think with the NFL.
And not only that, I think the Bengals wouldn't leave them out to dry.
No.
If
No,
the
it-
Bills
it-
if the
it's
Bills
a
stood
brother-
up and
players
said, "I don't
coach.
want to play," I
Right.
believe the Bengals will also say, "I don't want to play."
Yeah,
I
Zach
think
Taylor's an
those
amazing
two
coach.
teams, those 2 teams are forever connected.
Yep.
Those 100 plus players who experienced that last night, they are forever bonded. And I don't see
It's
the
a
Bengals
bond.
saying, "Hey, give them a forfeit because they
Yeah.
didn't want to play."
Guys, thank you so much for joining us here, for coming on under short notice. I really appreciate you guys being available midday for us to break this down. We had a lot of people in the chats and comments. Please make sure you like, share, comment, subscribe. All Hitless content. Please make sure you share this video for other people to watch it. It's also on YouTube. It's on Twitch. It's on Facebook. So the aftermath, if you didn't catch it, you could catch it on your ride home. And then listen to us. Please make sure you tune in to all Hitless platforms for latest updates. We do the best I can to update everyone on our Instagram page, on our Facebook fan page, and our group chat. The group chat right now, you got people arguing about Skip and and his comments. So if you want to chime in and get your daily conversation and your daily tea, just sit back and just read, because there's always somebody saying something crazy. Again, guys, thank you so much. What's up?
The fan zone, in light of what occurred with Damar, will not be going on air for our return tonight. We will be back next week, hopefully with some good news. But I think in light of everything as fans, I think we all need to just continue praying for Damar, and we want to give everybody that opportunity to do so.
I believe
Also,
our next show. Yeah, go ahead, Andrew.
I would 2 things. One, I implore, as someone who works in environmental health and safety, as well as the sports industry, I implore everyone to get first aid, CPR, and AED training.
Yes.
It's inexpensive. It can save a life.
Literally
And
saves lives.
I said it last night. I want to thank you guys for welcoming me to this brotherhood. And we may bicker, we may fight, we may argue, but at the end of the day, I got so much love for you guys. And take some time to tell your loved ones how you feel about them today.
Appreciate you, man. I appreciate everyone in the Hitless streets, the brotherhood. Love everyone in the group. Like, share, comment, subscribe to all of our content. I'll do the best I can to keep everybody updated about what's going on. Our next slated show is On the Court returns for the new year tomorrow. There's other things going on in the sports world. Donovan Mitchell has 71 points. We got the Luka and all these other different kinds of talks. So like, share, comment, subscribe, all Sports Hitless content. Thank you for all the love and support. And I'll see you guys soon. I'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.
Prayers to Damar.